Welcome to Myth Informed with your host, Brian, but not Dimitri. However, today we have with us a brilliantly talented guitarist and former Milwaukeean, Jason Seed. He's adept at many branches of music, including jazz, rock, and classical. His style is unapologetically original, being referred to previously as new jazz or baroque pop. Correct me if I'm wrong, or among others. Jason and his band will be performing at Mythcon V this year, and we're thrilled to have him. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, all right. First of all, how did we end up with you at Mythcon V? How did you hear about this? That it was interesting because you contacted us saying, "Hey, we're looking," and we thought, "Oh man, yeah, this is a great idea." Yeah. Where did you hear about the Mythcon?
I was going to come to the last one, and I ended up not being able to come. And then I kind of tossed out the idea of collaborating at some point. And I guess I originally heard of Mythcon through watching Sargon's channel, but also I think it was originally from him.
Okay. But, yeah, I mean, it did make the Troposphere. It could come from Sargon's channel. It really could have come from everywhere. It seemed like, coming out of traditionally the atheist community, there was a point between August and September that there wasn't a single person that had ever been connected to organized atheism in any way that did not know about this. So it was out there. And just, that I always want to make the point too, because we've pivoted a little bit in our mission in that we're not strictly an atheist organization. We took a poll last year after the Mythcon, and there was 10 to 13% religious there. Which I thought was cool that we're open-minded enough to where, you can come and share your views.
Right.
So we knew we're doing something right. So our new vision is to promote viewpoint diversity to help limit the effects of authoritarian ideology.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, now, what do you think about that? What do you see as authoritarian ideology in the world today?
Geez. A lot of that, I suppose, today comes more,
I mean, it would depend on where you are in the world.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, things in Pakistan are going to be very different than if you're in British Columbia, Canada.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how authoritarian. Well, I guess that bill C-16, is that what it was called? Yeah, that has some definitely authoritarian aspects, at least in terms of controlling speech.
Yeah. Compelled speech is interesting. And Jordan Peterson makes the argument because on the surface, the knee-jerk reaction to this is, come on, man. You can't use the pronouns. Right. You're being a jerk, or worse, right? And that is a reasonable knee jerk.
Yeah, and it's someone's right to have that opinion and view, but it's not their right to demand that people speak in a certain way.
Yeah, and I think when with the compelled speech, right? It's different. Where Jordan made the interesting point that if you told me that what I couldn't say, that he would be less upset to tell me what I must say. And what he said was, what if you have to compel my adjectives? What if I have to call you kind or good, all these things, I could have to refer to you in a positive way. And in that way you couldn't criticize Donald Trump or any politician because you would have to use their preferred adjectives,
right?
Which would be terrific and fantastic.
Right. So there would be hate adjectives. Instead of hate speech,
right? Or compelled good adjectives that you'd have to refer to Donald Trump only as tremendous, right? That's the idea, right?
Right.
Could you take? I suppose it's a slippery slope argument, but you can move it down. You can move it down a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. The compelled speech thing is just, I can't imagine people being okay with that. But I guess in Canada it worked.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say how popular the bill is, and obviously, there's a certain amount of people that are fighting it. To my knowledge, I don't think anyone's gotten rung up on it. Although the Lindsay Shepherd incident seemed weirdly close to his predictions on such a thing
right away.
Yeah, and then that happened within a year.
Yeah, within a year.
Yeah, and for those that may not know, Lindsay Shepherd is a graduate student at Laurier University in Canada, and she showed a 5-minute videotape of Jordan Peterson debating another professor on pronouns. And she was discussing using they as a singular, which is interesting, and wanted to kind of give both parts of speech, and then got kind of rung up by the Social Justice Tribunal. And that is scary.
It's very scary. I'm really happy she recorded it, because that gave all of us a window into what that really is like. And just there is this weird, I guess that, we're back to the kind of authoritarian idea, but the compelling speech and controlling speech, and what can you show and what can you not show in a classroom, and how are you going to affect these students by absolutely limiting what it is they can be exposed to. Something as simple as that, simply, a debate on Canadian television.
Right. I know something that was okay for public television. I mean, and it's interesting. One of the things that brought up was, Professor Rambakana said that these are she said that they're adults, they're 18, but he said, but they're very young adults and may not have the faculties to process all this. Now, it's an interesting argument, because you could say, well, we don't teach sex education to 4-year-olds, that they're maybe not ready for it, that there is a time, right? There are concepts that would be inappropriate to teach somebody that's too young,
right?
Because they're not going to understand it. And the question is,
by college.
Yeah, I know. It's weird that, the argument's been made that bones are, for example, like in biology, you see things that are anti-fragile. Your immune system is this way, and bones are this way. They need insults. Right. Your bones have like micro breaks every day. And without that, they don't stay strong. This is why zero gravity is actually so brutal on you.
Muscles too. Same thing.
And they're advancing the argument that perhaps words, perhaps ideas, perhaps like insults and things are like that you retain a higher fitness if you're exposed. Almost like, believe it or not, we need a few assholes out there, or else we're not as strong overall. I mean, it seems like a weird concept, but
I don't know. It makes sense. It goes into the the old adage: if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, I suppose. But
it's interesting these days. But some people say that the Mythcon is a free speech conference, and that's technically not true, because like free speech is one of our values. But if free speech is hard to kind of organize around, and that's why I like the mission statement of viewpoint diversity to combat authoritarianism, and wherever you see it. And there still is religious authoritarianism out there, absolutely. And even in the United States, certainly in the world, there is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it allows us as an organization to kind of turn and address whatever issues are relevant. Because I think you can be in a space. I think in some ways in the United States, atheists, maybe who were oppressed, I think you could make an absolute idea that, atheists were shunned, looked down upon, perhaps even excluded from a lot of things, throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I think now there's enough space.
I think so too. I think it's, if just by sheer numbers alone.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just interesting. I think they wherever you are, you probably make a bigger deal out of it. So how did you get into music? So you're going to play music. People are going to want to know, what are you going to play?
What we do, the group consists of bass, cello, viola, violin, guitar, and piano. And it's a mixture of, honestly, I do all the composing and arranging for the group. So it's a mixture of everything I like.
Okay.
Basically. And my tastes are pretty diverse, I guess. And if you come from a standpoint of creating music, then really different genres are different moods in a way. You can think of it as kind of different settings. So if you want to have something that changes from one kind of type of music, let's say type genre or whatever, to another midstream of an idea, even, you can use that for effect.
Yeah. Now, how do you do this that doesn't end up like Weird Al's polkas, right? that kind of jump around from song to song.
I don't know. I just try to make it as seamless as possible, I suppose, and try to make it genuine. A lot of times for me, in writing music or creating anything, there are usually like, 10,000 really, really terrible ways you can develop an idea, and maybe 10 that are good, and maybe 2 of those 10 that are really good. And those, if you can surf those 2 ideas, usually one of them is better than the other, and some lead down kind of paths that just abruptly end. But if you can surf the right one, you can kind of develop something in an organic way that is organic for the listener as well.
Okay. How many instruments do you play?
Guitar and piano, mainly.
Okay. Yeah. Any string or traditional string?
No, not so much. As soon as I get a bow in my hand, everything goes really, really wrong.
but those that you work with do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you grow up with like for a love of the symphony?
No. My family was more of a rock and roll crowd, I guess.
Okay.
So growing up, for me, I heard more of rock music than anything else. But I remember hearing Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto. It's called the Emperor Concerto.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically his ode to Napoleon, and it reworked the way I thought about music, because everything I had been trying to write up to that time, if you can imagine that piece by Beethoven as being this kind of vast architectural structure, like a palace, I just felt like everything I was writing was like just these little mud huts in comparison. and it was just so beautiful and really, really overwhelming to think of in terms of how would you construct this thing? You know, it's kind of mind-boggling. I still feel that way about Beethoven's music, actually, and Bach. But
yeah, that's it. And Bach was, it precedes Beethoven by a couple hundred years, right?
Not quite a couple hundred, but yeah,
okay.
It definitely precedes him. And you can hear Bach's influence on later Beethoven too, especially the string quartet stuff, the later string quartets.
Okay. No, I didn't realize that was an kind of an ode to Napoleon. That's an interesting historical
Fifth Piano Concerto. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, all of his music is amazing, but
right. I think that the Romance number 1 and 2 is also Beethoven. Is that right?
Romance?
Yeah.
I don't know that. Maybe.
Or is that Bach? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can't remember. But either way, like you can tell my knowledge of orchestra is limited, but it is extraordinarily beautiful. I look at that and I think, how can people compose this? And when you were deaf, let alone play it.
Yeah.
This is why I got stuck in the marching band.
Yeah.
You didn't need to be like, you actually didn't need to be as good instrumentally as you did in the concert band. So.
Right. Yeah. And jazz has its own beauty, and it's different. It's not as constructed, obviously, not as architectural, let's say, but more kind of free flowing and organic in its own right. And depending on who it is you're listening to, a lot of Charles Mingus's music is just truly amazing. It kind of bridges a lot of different ways of approaching jazz and approaching composition in jazz. So we're actually playing some of his stuff at Mythcon.
Okay, cool. Like, now, how would if you were gonna write something for yourself, like if you wanted to take a piece and actually create it, do you know how to like create the music? How do you do that? Do you practice, or do you create sheet music for that?
Oh, sheet music. Yeah, I write everything down. I actually have an easier time many ways, like writing it to paper first and then transferring that to a computer.
Okay.
Which is much easier, because then you can do all the parts.
It really takes a good year though, like to be able to like create the sheet music.
Yeah, and get used to it. And going just straight to paper. I usually use references, either piano or guitar. Okay. But
does that take a while, or did you crank it right out?
It depends on what it is. It depends on like how long it is. I got a piece commissioned from an organization called Rush Hour in Chicago. And that took a while for me to finish. I don't know why, it just did it, but luckily I finished it just before we played it.
You're better than me. For one of my buddies' his dad's 50th birthday when I was in college, he was like, Brian, you're going to play the Notre Dame fight song at my 50th. Okay, right now, I being third trombone, right, in the marching band, you're giving you an idea of my musical prowess. We did not have the melody, right? So I'm like, well, what I would play, he's not even going to recognize.
Right.
That took the better part of a week to get like just the intro and a refrain and the outro. Like, wow, that. To me, people that are good at music, it fascinates me. Yeah. I can't. I basically, this is me flunking out at fractions in music.
The more you work at it, the better you get. The more you kind of tune your ears to music, the more in tune with it you get, I suppose. Okay. The better you're able to recognize little phrases and little, intervallic leaps and different stuff that you can then just kind of pick out.
Okay.
Either something you're hearing in your head or something you're hearing that you transcribe.
That's really cool. So we're not going to give away too many hints on what you're going to play, or do you like at the Mythcon, because we were talking about some ideas before this podcast that I think the folks at Mythcon are really going to like, but are they better surprises?
Well, the one is a better surprise. That one we were,
yeah.
But you know, we'll play a variety of stuff, including my own stuff, but also like some Radiohead. I love Radiohead, especially early Radiohead. And what else? Maybe you know, I just was in the studio today, finishing up working and mixing on this version of a Beethoven piece that we're doing. So maybe we'll do that too. It's the second movement from the Seventh Symphony I arranged for that group.
Okay. What do you think of like postmodern jukebox? Do you know them?
Yeah.
And they're able to, like, you know, take songs like, you know, Lady Gaga's Bad Romance, and then they flip it 1920s Gatsby style.
Yeah.
And,
no, I think that's great.
And all kinds. Yeah. I think that's fantastic.
I do too. I think it's good for people to hear music in different forms like that too, because you know, you can recognize the bits of it that you know, but then also hear it in this very, very different context and setting.
Is that what you do sometimes to classical music then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. And I think that's a lot of fun, because again, you're going old and then you're modifying it with newer influences, or, you know, in PMJ's case, they're usually taking new songs and modifying them with these older,
the older styles, and
which is kind of fun. I took my parents, like, it was the one concert, you know, my parents, like, I got them tickets to this, and they're like, "Oh, how did you know we were into this?" And I'm like, I didn't. I just thought you might like it.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
It's kind of fun that, you know, you have the kind of the big bands and new, and there was an eclectic mix. If I think people were like, "Hey, the big bands are finally back," and then, you know, and then a lot of younger people that just think this stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think we're definitely glad to have you. So, you know, speaking of like symphony and this and that, right? What do you make of what's commonly known as like there's one of like the tests, or one of the evidences for sexism in the United States was symphonies, and that unless you would play behind a blocked a curtain or in a way that you could not see the person, that more men were being selected than women. And I think they had either attempted to, you know, train or, you know, erase the bias for like musical ability. What do you think? What are your thoughts about that, being a little bit closer to symphony than most of us?
Well, the way auditions happen now is behind a screen.
So is that standard?
Yeah. And they, you know, or just something so that you can't see the musician, you can only hear them, including having a rug that leads up to that, so you can't hear the nature of the shoes against the floor if they're wearing high heels, which is interesting.
Yeah, that really is.
Erase it completely. So then, you just hear whatever it is the person's playing.
Interesting. Now, does that actually interfere with the people behind? Because it seems like anything that you might do to screw up acoustics could screw things up. Yeah,
I mean, it probably dampens it a bit, but I'm sure you can still get the general facility of the player.
And I guess everybody's playing with that same handicap.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So how long has that been?
I've never thought about this until now, but I wonder if they're also instructed to not wear cologne or perfume.
That's a good point. I never smell anything.
It gets kind of
everyone else does. Yeah, like, you know, like somebody, I'll be talking to somebody and they'll be like, "Man, I was like, oh, that guy was weird." Somebody else will be like, "Dude, can you smell the alcohol on him? He's hammered." I'm like, God, no, I can never smell the alcohol. I can never smell anything. Certainly not the booze. I mean, you can smell perfume and cologne if it's there, but it's the subtle. That would be really interesting. I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd never thought about it until now. Maybe, but
that's a good point. But how long have they been doing that? Do you know?
I don't, for a while now. But honestly, I don't know how long. I have to ask.
Yeah, and I guess too that would also sub out for things like age. You know, I see when I see orchestras, they seem to be pretty diverse, especially age-wise.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people too that get into orchestras stay in that orchestra like until they're ready to retire. So, you know, somebody who gets it. Well, I mean, the Chicago Symphony is a major symphony gig. You know, if you can get that, you've done very, very well, and you're going to get paid very well, and you're going to be in that probably until you retire. So you know, sometimes people don't retire until they're in their 70s. Because they can still play, they still have facility, they can still, you know, I would hope here.
Have you ever met like a true like a savant on the strings, like somebody like Renard Capucon or something, like who's just truly an expert, like a maestro or whatever you will?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
they like.
Well, I mean, a lot of the people I work with are, the people that'll be at Mythcon are very, very good. All like professional, seriously talented people. The violinist in the group is really good at playing Indian music and on violin as well as playing jazz, so he can really improvise. And I would definitely consider him, extremely at the upper end of what we would consider virtuosic.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
how many people in the band?
6, including me. Yeah. So.
And how often do you play?
Fairly often. It kind of depends on the time and the year. The thing that is the biggest drag on that is simply scheduling. 2 different orchestras, and then the pianist is more of a Marianne Parker is her name. She's more of a freelance, musician, and then just trying to coordinate as well with my schedule is kind of a nightmare, to be honest.
Do you ever get like, or is there an industry that is seeking for like video game music? I mean, I noticed like Battlefield 1, which is one of my favorite games. I'm like, that's a full orchestra that's playing that. That's well composed. It's an amazing original score.
Yeah.
Like but there's so many video games out there. Like, do you know people that do this?
I don't know anybody personally that does it, but I know of people that have. There's a composer, and more people consider him, I guess, more in a jazz realm, named John Zorn, who I know did some video game music quite a while ago now, probably like 12 years ago or more. But so I would love to do it. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, I think that it would be a blast.
Yeah, and I'm with the way those games develop, I'm not sure if you would have to have things that if it's kind of like those. Do you remember the books where like they would have multiple endings? Do you remember those? Yeah. So
turn to page 96 if you decide to leave.
Right, exactly.
If you stay at the party, turn to 77.
Right. I wonder if, because video games function like that to some degree, if in writing it, you'd have to write, different themes for different choices that the player makes. Yeah. So maybe even key change type stuff to go to something new. If, something drastic or terrible happens, I don't know, but they haven't fully lost the game yet.
What's going on? Yeah. And in Mario, even like Mario Kart, the many different takes on that would be fun.
Oh yeah. A friend of mine who lives in town, actually, Aaron Gardner, is an amazing saxophonist, was with a group called Ulu, ULU, that amazing group through the early part of the 2000s, I guess. But one of their kind of hits, I guess, was the Mario theme.
Oh wow!
And the jazz kind of.
And there's so many, like there's so many, but you can immediately kind of tell whether it's Mario, whether it's the main theme or just a variant of it. And I think that shows a brilliance to be able to hang on to the theme even though it's totally different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And the like kind of multifunctionality of a theme.
Yeah. That's kind of neat. Well, maybe we'll see some of that at the after party.
Sure. It would be,
interesting. So but it's not your full-time career. You also you have a day job, or
I do now. Yeah. I didn't used to. I basically I got married and decided like, okay, now that I'm married, I should probably make steady money. Honestly, just to be totally honest. So so yeah, I got into I work as a psychiatric nurse right now.
Okay.
Will soon be getting my degree as a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
That's really cool. And that will give you some prescribing rights and abilities
and diagnosing. Yeah.
And then, so what's that patient population that you do?
That I deal with is people who are getting out of nursing homes or mental institutions who are then trying to reintegrate into society, essentially.
Okay. Now, is there a lot of people coming out of nursing homes? Like sometimes nursing home is on there and then later to hospice. So, are there people, how does someone come out of the nursing home?
A lot of people who have like, if there's someone who has a more extreme, case of schizophrenia, let's say, they can end up in a nursing home very young.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in their 20s.
So in a way, they're mental illness, and so nursing homes can take that. Did there used to be, like historically, I think we were a bit draconian about what we did, and you kind of threw everybody into I don't know, the loony bin or the crazy
kind of general patient population.
Yeah. And probably it was probably more of a jail than it was a treatment facility.
I think you're right. I think it really was. I know of, there are definitely many, many horror stories at the beginning part of the 20th centuries, and before that, even worse, of that type of setting. But
so now it's kind of flipped, and
Mhm.
I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest had a lot to do with that.
I do too. I really do too. Making people aware of, to some degree anyway, the nature of the absolute struggle this can be, and the fact that, like in the book, he writes a lot of it from the point of view of, gosh, I forget the guy's name now, Indian Joe or something. It's been a long time since I read the book, but anyway, it's from his actual point of view, and some of the schizophrenic episodes that he has, where he's imagining and hallucinating essentially things that are being done to him that are pretty horrific. He does beautiful. Ken Kesey, the writer, did a beautiful job of describing these things.
And schizophrenia, like for an actual definition, means that you actually see and hear voices that are telling you to do something, or that something might happen to you. Is that right?
Yeah, disorganized thinking, hallucinations, just general kind of cognitive disorganization, let's say, is one of the main hallmarks.
Right.
There are like 5 distinct, if I remember correctly, things in the DSM that lay it out. And if you have 3, or I think it's 3 of them, then that makes you kind of get this diagnosis. But
sure. And then and there's a bunch of variants. Like there's schizoaffective disorder and others that you probably, again, people have different ranges of problems. But this is the reason I bring it up is it seems like we're talking about this a lot, or not, in today's gun debate.
Yeah.
I think that everybody can agree that, like, people being shot up at a Waffle House, people at school, at a rock concert, or whatever, is horrific. That seems to be epidemic. And some are talking about the solution being gun control. Others are talking about mental health, and maybe one can say maybe more or less, but it seems like the mental health does have something to do with this.
Oh, definitely. And I would think the mental health aspect would actually be more important than the gun control aspect, just in terms of its functionality and in terms of actually getting anything done. The process of taking people's guns away from them in the United States would be an unbelievably laborious and probably often ridiculous one. And then, actually dealing with people's mental health to the point where you can, assess essentially someone who's going to be of a mindset that would snap like that.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jordan Peterson who was talking about how with he used the Columbine kids,
the Dylan Klebold,
and their manifesto, that they basically wrote is something that is essentially they had come to hate life itself, and so they're going to attempt to destroy what they see as innocence, in a sense, as a means of getting back at what they feel is this thing that has victimized them. But that thing, though, is life itself, which was pretty dark.
His writings, and I've heard him read some of that, are very, very off-putting. They're trigger warning before you read that. Then they're going to shock you a little bit. And these it seems like you should be able to, like, nothing's perfect, but it seems like we're smart enough to be able to, like, kind of catch on to that. And it seems like if we spent more money on mental health, I wonder if we wouldn't reduce this rate of it's really like fanaticism.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like a kind of rampant, non-focused fanaticism.
Yeah, I mean, because it's this multiple shootings. That this is different than the one-off violence where a wife or a husband flips, snaps, murders the person, right? I mean, that's actually, that happens plenty.
Yeah,
but that will make the Saturday 1 hour whodunit shows, but this doesn't make outrage news.
Right. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't.
So did you have any salient thoughts on what we might be able to do in regards to mental health?
Well, I mean, definitely putting more money into it, but having more money put into it, there'd be more of a functionality within the mental health system to have a variety of different programs that would appeal to a variety of different, types of people who are struggling with whatever it is they're struggling with. So having something available to people that they could resonate with, in such a way that it would draw them in and let them be open to the idea of having some type of assistance.
No, like a Dylan Klebold. Is there any way to draw somebody like that in? Or is that somebody that you have to kind of find out? I mean, what can you do? That becomes a legal problem. Can you take that guy's rights away if he hasn't done anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially so young, you know, that I would think you probably could at that age.
You know, maybe, yeah, maybe you could, you know, I mean, minors don't have full rights. And if you've got a diary full of, you know, this kind of stuff that shock the parents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so much of it goes into just parenting itself, which I don't know how you would ever structure that in a way that would, I'm not sure. You'd have to have people who just realized they had certain facilities available to them if they needed it.
Yeah.
And would have options open to parents, to everybody.
And maybe even educating parents, because those are the ones that are probably most likely to see this in its earliest stages, to alert them, to what schizophrenia is, what the different disorders are.
Yeah. Well, and now in the way the new DSM is structured, it's essentially they've broken schizophrenia into a variety of different categories.
Yeah.
So it's not just considered schizophrenia anymore.
I mean, we know, like, you know, like you have things like FAST, you know, this is how to recognize a stroke. Face,
that's right.
Arm, speech, time. And then time, because like you've got to get to the hospital like right away.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to sleep off your stroke.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like
I actually just had that happen at work with a colleague who sat down next to me and asked me if her voice sounded different. And when I looked over at her, I saw that a portion of her face was drooping and she was slurring her words. So I got her to the emergency room. And so between the time that I saw her, you know, having these symptoms to the time that she actually went in to get a CT scan was about 25 minutes.
Nice.
So
and like
it worked really well.
For the non-medical people out there, 6 hours is the amount of time you have to introduce a drug called TPA for ischemic stroke. Yeah. So, okay.
I don't remember if it's 6 or 3.
Is it 3? Is it 3? I thought it was 6. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you've got more degrees than me, so I'm gonna let you trumpet. So I'm gonna say 3.
Okay.
But well done. But it seems like, and obviously that would be an oversimplification, but it seems like, you know, parents read books all the time about how to raise their kids and this and that. Like, you could slip this in there, and I wonder how many people get help. I don't know what the stats are.
I don't know either. I don't know. I mean, to what? You know, I've heard like 1% of the population is sociopathic or psychopathic. So I mean, yeah, it is. But I mean, who knows how you would teach people? But I mean, again, you know, how do you raise consciousness in anything? You'd have to like market it essentially. You have to get it out there enough to the point that people would realize it's easily available to them, which would require an enormous amount of money.
It does. I mean, that guy, I listened to the guy that stopped the guy at the Waffle House and he grabbed that Grun barrel, which was like hot is gangbusters, burned himself, but still was able to disarm him.
Yeah, that's amazing. He should definitely be awarded something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It sounded like a Guadalcanal story, you know, like it really was something else.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of here, like, I think more focus should be put on that kind of thing, like that kind of, how do you teach that kind of bravery and morals?
I have no idea.
I know.
I have no idea. I don't have kids. I'd be much more maybe aware of that idea.
Yeah, I mean, the point of like the coming after the guns, it seems to me too, it'd be the same reason. Like, okay, how are you going to get out? Like, if you took a right-wing issue, how are you going to get out all illegal immigrants? What are you going to do? Send ICE into everywhere? Like, what bad things are going to happen? And if you did take away like assault weapons and things like that, you just got to wonder how many people hold up in Montana or somewhere, and then you try to go after them.
Right. Yeah.
Bad things are going to happen. Like, this just isn't a good idea, even though both seem like, okay, we're just making attempts to force the law.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I don't remember the name of the ranch. I think it was late 90s that some guy was holed up in his, which might have been in Montana. I don't remember.
Well, I mean, Waco was no, that's its own thing, right? Yeah. But that was a cult. But
still, that was incredibly disturbing. Just watching that building burn. I remember when that happened.
Yeah, I know. And then that they went in too, and you think, did they need to go in?
Yeah, no.
You know, and these 7 FBI agents just kind of ran into, you know.
Well, they had a tank too.
Yeah. And
They're
they
freaking
just
tank.
they got mowed down, and like it's a really good question. Like how do you deal with this? And
I'm not sure, to be honest. That's
no,
like,
it's a good point. To me, this is what my point in bringing it up is. Extreme solutions tend always to be bad. And I think that this was the problem at Waco. They wanted to get it done early.
Yeah.
You know, getting rid of assault rifles, I think it sounds good, but I think you're going to run into all kinds of other problems. You know?
I think you're right. I think an extreme solution to something means that something has gotten to a point that you've allowed it to become an extreme situation. It requires an extreme solution. Getting, educating people earlier, having some type of awareness that is spread amongst the public just about signs of specific types of behavior, specific disorder signs, signs and symptoms of whatever it might be that could lead your child to become someone who is not only kind of maybe suffering from some type of personality disorder, but hold up in themselves against the world. Is I would think would be just vital.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of parents will get blamed for this when you actually have real mental health, because there is bad parenting. There is such a thing as bad parenting, but there's also such a thing as legitimate mental health that you just don't know, and then the parents didn't do anything really wrong, and but I mean, so I'm not even against gun control as such, in that maybe limiting, like I would concede on limiting magazine size, like that seems to be a reasonable, like a solution. But it seems like what I see in the outrage culture today is like everything is too much, that we must, I think everybody hopefully wants to reduce the rate of rape, but I don't, to say that we need to get it to zero is essentially impossible. And to continue to alter the laws to get there, we get extreme solutions. And I think we're so far down that road in some ways about rape and rape culture that are you noticing the extreme conservatives pop up? I've seen a couple Islamists say, hey, we don't have this problem. We segregate the genders. And we don't see it because they're never unsupervised. So don't we look good? And I'm like, oh man, when you're giving those guys a point, it's pretty bad.
It's really bad. And I don't see segregation of the genders as being a solution.
I don't either. I don't. But yet, they have a point that, well, if men and women don't hang together, well, there can't be any incidents of sexual assault. But like, that's the point. Like, we want such extreme solutions that it's almost where we're going.
And
it seems like when Matt Damon speaks out on like Me Too, and then he says, well, you're a man, like you don't know, like you just be quiet. Wow. It seems like somebody who wants to be a part of it. Like if you exclude the other gender from talking about it, I can't imagine you're ever going to get a good solution. If men exclude women from a conversation or vice versa.
No, I mean, how much did people fight just for women to be able to play golf? I mean, just anything, right? To, like, not have men exclusive clubs of whatever sort. Which used to be the case.
And many golf courses, right?
Right. I mean, just that alone, and to reverse that completely as a solution is madness.
It is, right. Now, I don't think that's what they're calling for, but it starts with when you be so extreme, and now you can't say this, you can't do this, that it starts to make that guy look, the person advocating for segregation gender, make like he has a point. And that this is some of my like problem with the conceptualization of kind of our ability to talk about sexual assault and rape. Okay. One of the other things I was going to talk about is like, do you think that like the concept of free speech is that changing?
Geez, I hope not. I mean, to me, I can't imagine limiting the people's ability to speak is limiting their ability to express themselves. Limiting their ability to express themselves is limiting their ability to be themselves. I don't know how that could ever be seen as something positive. I really don't, especially since words are not going to hurt anyone. I mean, a call to action, is kind of the dividing line as it stands now. So that, to me, that seems just absolutely obvious. If you call people to some violent action, that's a very different thing than allowing someone to just spout out whatever it is they want.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's not going to hurt you to hear something.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, if somebody says like a free speech absolutist, I say, well, there's always limitations on speech, right? You're not allowed to incite violence.
Right.
Right. I mean, so that's an automatic limitation on free speech that I think most people agree with. I think the concept of words are not, you know, can't hurt me is starting to change with the theories of microaggression that are saying, but over time, it's the over time that these kind of create, and they'll say they create mental distress. And are you seeing this pop up? I mean, I think this is limited a little bit to the academy. Are you seeing this pop up in medicine?
No, I haven't really had any type of talks about it anyway with anybody. But I think it is limited to the universities.
Yeah. But you're more in mental health where, you know, I'm kind of in a different area, but but yeah, so you're not seeing, oh, wow, let's talk about microaggressions.
No.
Okay.
I haven't.
All right. Yeah. That I find
enough.
it. Yeah. I think I find it curious because I don't know if the research on this is good. And like eventually though, like through mental health, like I think that's where the connection is. I think those that say that are kind of trying to be so inclusive of transgender would say, well, you need to teach kids that some men have uteruses, right? Okay, well, I don't think that they're ever going to teach that actually in like your gynecology residency. I mean,
no,
I don't think they're going to say that. But so you know those conservatives out there that think that that's going to happen are probably wrong. However, like the mental health, that's where I would think that it might get in, but that's a way to actually kind of rigorously test it.
Yeah. I mean,
it would be hard to set up a controlled experiment for microaggressions. Like, I would think.
I would think it'd be impossible. I mean, anybody can be offended about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of, well, and again, like we were talking about, if you expose people to stuff, whatever it does kill you, makes you stronger idea. Being exposed to things that challenge you in some way is good for you. Being exposed to things that maybe cause you to feel uncomfortable to some slight degree will maybe make you stronger as an individual. So when you actually come up against something that is truly something you not only find offensive, but finds to be something that you want to take some type of stand against, you'll be able to actually take that stand rather than be so weakened by all of the supposed microaggressions that you've experienced over the course of your life that you're unable to stand on your own.
Yes. And in a way, blow it off, right? If somebody, you know, we're saying this race is smarter than the other race, like to say to know the argument and to throw it back in their face and really debunk that as bullshit. Like it seems like that would be the way to do it. I mean, the alt-right, for example, will make the argument that culture is downstream from race. Now, I do believe politics is downstream from culture. But I do not believe that culture is downstream from race. That there's something specific about skin color or racial makeup that predicts culture. But
I think the melanin concentration in someone's skin doesn't mean a damn thing.
No, it doesn't. And like, there's more diversity within a race than there is even between them.
Yeah,
you know, the amount that we're different between races, and we're different to like a bonobo, which we're really close to, but it's still massive. You know, the genetic difference even between races is like 1/10%, if that. I think it may be 1/100%. It's very, very, very low.
Yeah, it seems absurd to think that on the basis of someone's, you know, history. I mean, what's weird too is that a lot of people who seem to be kind of so focused on race, on the other side of the argument, or like on the left side of the argument, are also absolutely, completely convinced that everyone's a blank slate to begin with, which, you know, I don't understand how these two things would, you know, work out in someone's mind.
And it's unfortunate, right? I think the blank slate argument undoes a little bit of the, or maybe a lot of the progress that we've made, in the 90s with gay marriage. I mean, if you say that we are in fact a completely blank slate, what's the problem between somebody who is convinced, maybe they're stuck in a very religious congregation and they think, well, the pastor says he's got a way to make me straight. There's well, seriously, there's a therapy regimen. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you would have to entertain that argument.
I can't, for anyone who's ever been in that position, I can't imagine how absurd and horrific it would be. But again, I mean, judging someone on the basis of their sexuality, I mean, why would anybody care if they're not sexually involved with someone, you know, about what they're doing in their private sexual time? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are really interested in people's bedrooms. This is probably why Kim Kardashian's sex tape sells so well, right? But I mean, but still, like, what I want to do is preserve and defend that. And it seems like that undermines the argument a little bit, which sucks. I was pulling open the chat here. I just wanted to take a look at that. Hello, MM and Jason. Let me read this kind of small. Heard you guys rocked at Kilroy. There was a Waffle House shooting yesterday. I think that man had gun rights revoked. His father gave his gun to him. Oh, so he'd had his gun rights revoked. And interesting.
I heard that. Yeah, and his dad gave him an AR-15 back to him or something like after. So against the wishes of the police. But
yikes! I wonder if that puts that guy, the father, in legal trouble then.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
not a lawyer.
That'd be a weird legal territory, actually.
That says, can we really prevent gun violence at all? It seems like there's always a way that it will happen. Like the truck attack in Toronto, isn't violence the problem? Exactly. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Tim McVeigh had that. I think that up until 9/11 was the largest single terrorist attack that we had, right? 115, I think, dead and a whole host injured in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City, yeah. I remember that too.
Yeah, and it was a giant fertilizer bomb.
Yeah.
It seems like poison, like through air ducts, like could wreak havoc. The Boston bombers, right? There was no guns there. And I think, 13 or more and many injured through shrapnel.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. Treating people as though they are adults means giving them certain rights that may extend into the possibility of them being dangerous people, I suppose. But I mean, that's why there are certain laws in place to limit people's actions. But at the same time, not allowing people to have firearms does seem strange to me.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem like you're treating them like an adult. I would just assume that someone knows, if they're going to take the time, how to handle this thing. I myself don't own any firearms.
Yeah. Again, like things like you have to pass X training course. That I guess I'm okay with that too.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, at least the same type of training that going to someone driving a car.
Yeah, that was going to be my analogy, right? Yeah. Driving a car, you don't just get that right. Now, granted, driving is not a right that's enshrined in the Constitution. However, like it's a pretty common right, and I still think we can put limitations on this. I mean, you're right to vote, but yet you do have to show an ID. It is illegal to vote more than once. There are restrictions on voting.
Limits there,
unless you're in Chicago in the 60s. But
and you're part of the Daily Clan.
Yeah. Now you mentioned like the intersection, right? Of we're going to have a panel on intersectionality at Mythcon, but at the intersection of your two careers in mental health and in your music, you were talking about that there was some folks coming from the nursing home that you were doing something for. Tell me about what's going on there.
Well, just like the Lullaby Project stuff? Yeah. Okay, so there's an organization called the Lullaby Project that is originally came from the New York Philharmonic and Carnegie Institute in New York, and the Chicago Symphony has been doing this for a while now, and I've been lucky enough to be part of it. It's a wonderful, wonderful project where we basically are able to take young mothers who want to have a gift for their child. And the gift is going to be a song that they essentially create. So they'll usually come with lyrics, and I help them structure that into a song format or into whatever type of thing really they want. And, then musicians from the symphony are brought in, and I arrange that for the musicians from the symphony to play. And then we usually have a number of different singers, opera singers, usually, who are some from the Lyric Opera in Chicago, who then sing the vocal part.
Okay.
With backing, whatever type of instrumentation we come up with from the people in the symphony that are interested.
And is that do you accept donations that's free of charge for those that can't afford it?
Oh no, it's completely free for the people involved. But,
Right.
It's a wonderful, wonderful project, and it's often extremely touching because these are people sometimes who are currently homeless and living in a shelter, or people who are very, very young. For example, I had a couple. It was really a boy and a girl. They were both 15, and she was pregnant, and she wanted to have this song for her child. So she even referenced being 15 in the song. So
these people write lyrics or give you an idea, and then you help them make this into like.
Usually have them write like a letter to the child, or like come up with a series of images or just ideas they have about how they'd like that to relate to their kid. My thing came undone.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then help them shape it into an actual song format, and then have that song, if they're on SoundCloud, if anybody's interested, Lullaby Project on SoundCloud.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. Like, as much as social justice will occasionally get thrown around as pejorative, and I generally don't like that, because I think that there are legitimate efforts at social justice, and this sounds like one of them. That's you're actually doing something to benefit these lives. Sometimes I question whether or not tearing down a statue in a park somewhere is going to help the indigent.
No.
Like, what did you do for them? Did you give them a handful of rice? Did you teach them a skill? No.
Yeah. Well, what you ended up doing is taking away a piece of history that might help. I mean, even if it's a piece of history that you find disgusting, it's a reference point that you can use as something to then avoid in the future. This is part of the, not letting history repeat itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we have a Holocaust museum, right? It's not because this is the wonderful, this is not Disney World, right? This is a sad place to go. It's there to remind us, I think, of our inner nature, that there's parts of it. I like to make the analogy to like drowning, right? If you're out drowning, and I come to swim out to grab you, and especially if I don't have a life vest, the chances that you'll drown me to save yourself are really high. And I don't think that you're a bad person. It's just your drowning program is online for the very first time. You don't know what it's
epinephrine overload.
Yeah, I mean, that's your primal instinct. I think mob mentality is that we're go along with the group, even though you're like, I don't know about this, but yet you'll go along with it, or at least not say anything. And I think those are the crappy parts of our nature that I think we have to be aware of.
Yeah, but deal with and not shy away from.
Look head on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think bullies in some ways that they're always will be that. But in some ways, like, overcoming that can make you stronger than if you've never been bullied.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, in my experience in high school, I just moved around a lot as a kid, so I ended up going to 5 different high schools, which was interesting in the sense
that's a lot.
It was really
like
a lot
more than one a year.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a sociological trial by fire. Just learning how people interact and seeing different group dynamics in different settings in different parts of the country. But I ended up in a variety of different situations where I essentially got my ass kicked for one way or another. And, these are things that happen in your life that you then reference later in your life as something that either motivated you to change something or work in some direction toward really like making yourself less vulnerable, which is, I don't know, probably almost always a positive thing.
Yeah. I think that's what we were getting back to anti-fragile.
Yeah.
I mean, what bullying is a form of stigma, and men bully different than women. Generally, the male bullies they want to meet you somewhere, right? They're gonna, especially if they're bigger than you, or they want to
physical.
Yeah, they want to take a swing at you. They want to, like, show you that. Whereas women or girls, we should say, like, tend to use social stigmatization in character assassination as the primary weapon, and in that way, it can be just as bad as the physical violence. So in some ways, maybe this is where some of the words are violence thing is coming from. That this is really, really bad. We have to stop that. But it's a little odd because that's also now the wrong intersection, because that's generally how women or girls do this. I mean, Jonathan Haidt and a lot of the social scientists will say that the internet is a lot worse for young girls because of that sort of shaming, whereas boys just play video games for the most part.
Yeah.
And in that, not that girls don't play video games, but like that kind of social shaming, that's brutal. And that'll work on men and women.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing some of that where you have some people that maybe are not predators that are caught up in the Me Too, like that kind of social, like it's devastating.
Yeah. And well, the just, the advent of the internet came out basically when I was in college.
Yeah.
It became popular. I went into college, no internet came out.
Did you have an email address like freshman year? No. And then you had it by senior year?
I did not have one freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did probably sophomore.
Yeah. I sent my first email sophomore year.
Yeah.
I was on bulletin boards before that, though.
Okay.
I was one of the earliest kids. I remember in 1987,
nice.
the smartest kid in my class. We were goofing around on bulletin board systems. We asked the SciSop, where he did, ask him where the nearest internet drop was, and I said, "The what?" Like, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, no, if you go into Columbus, like whatever, And then we were thinking, like, can we sneak a long distance call to Columbus? Which you got charged for at that time,
right,
to hop on the internet. My dad was mostly clueless. We did.
That's great. Wow.
My dad kept saying
early
that
too, 87.
Yeah, like he kept saying that when we would do this, he goes, "Brian, this has to be costing you something." And I'm thinking, well, just long distance, but I'm trying to avoid that. But he's like, "You got to be getting charged." I'm like, "No, we're not. We're not getting charged." He goes, "What? Who would do this? You don't get something for nothing." And well, that's generally true. But I'm like, in this case, you do, Dad.
Right.
And
at the very beginning of a brand new, really, functional technology, you can.
Yeah, I know.
But right at the beginning.
I think right. So I still tease him a little bit to this day. I'm like, "Hey, I was right." And
that's great.
That was kind of cool. There was some saying, "Wow, that's really an awesome project." That's so a compliment.
The lullaby project. Yeah, it really is. It's really gratifying to see, especially when we record the things.
Yeah.
And they get to hear the full realization of this thing that they had just been working on with you. Usually it's just me and a guitar, and then one of the singers will come over. We'll kind of try to flesh it out in a session and then do another one. And then at the actual recording, when they hear the full complete arrangement with, like last time we had cello and clarinet and pitch percussion, marimba and vibraphone, violin, what else? One other instrument I'm blanking. Oh, bass. And with the singers, and it was beautiful.
That's kind of cool. I wonder if you might then again, this is free, and then it sounds like you're focusing primarily on the indigent there, who would obviously have a hard time buying a physical gift often for them. But God, I gotta wonder, there's a lot of working people that I think wow, what to give your spouse, what to give your rich uncle, that has that's that almost sounds kind of cool. Could you monetize that and then outreach even more to those that
maybe, maybe. Yeah. As an actual functional gift.
Yeah. I know, but it's cool. And then, if you're advancing it as a charity, then you could do even more work for those that can afford it. And to me, this is what I call real social justice. I think Jordan Peterson often is mischaracterized as this anti-social justice where alt-right, not, all the words. But the thing is, he's fighting against the pronouns. He's fighting against what he perceives as over political correctness, but he has this personal authoring project. And that it is wildly interesting. His studies, in the Netherlands where he did those, they took who's performing the highest, right? And in that order, it was Dutch women, Dutch men, immigrant women, and immigrant men at the bottom. And all of them went through the personal authoring program. What do you want to get out? It was structured. I won't go into all of the structure, but that and to help get your life under your control as much as possible. But the interesting thing was, although all groups benefited from top to bottom, the ones on the bottom benefited the most. And he said by the end of the program, those on the bottom, the immigrant men, were actually slightly outperforming the Dutch women.
Wow.
So to me, how is that not social justice?
This is planning out I'm trying to remember all of this, a 5-year plan of what you want to see in your life and how you'll actually get there.
Right. But really and really test and ask yourself. And I think, I don't want to go deep into it lest I misquote some of it, but with real studies like that, like, wow, this backs it up, because I do believe that there is some room for personal narrative, but creating policy on personal narrative would be like you guys creating your thoughts in medicine from a single case study.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Now, you can take individual case studies. That's why we have them in the literature, like, into account. But I think what's happening is those individual case studies mean, like, if you have that, they get to speak. And there was somebody criticizing our intersectional panel, saying you have too many white men. And I thought, what does it matter if the idea is, what if we were giving this speech with a carpeted
behind a screen,
behind a screen and carpeted, so you didn't know, and we even voiced over so you couldn't tell the voices.
Ran it through
would that change? No. And if that would change your perception of what was being said, you gotta ask yourself whether or not either you're the racist or you are looking at race far too much.
Making it too much of a filter through which you see people.
That would really be interesting. Wow. That would be interesting for the Mythcon. Like if
you'd have so many people complaining about the fact that everyone, through the voice program ends up sounding like Stephen Hawking.
I know, right? And then now we're ableist. Like, that would suck.
That would suck.
Like, we weren't trying to. I know this is what happens. And again, I don't mean to belie. I really don't mean to belie, like, social justice is a concept. I mean to belie those that take it to absolute extremes and start to twist things, and nothing can get worse. Like often this will happen with the fundamentally religious, where little you do not know what's going to come out of their mouth. That's why sometimes it's so fun to talk, because you're like, they really say that? And I often see the radicals on both these sides like, did you really say that? And that's true on both sides. I don't mean to always pick on the left. You pick on the right, and they start asking why. Don't you think it's weird that there's Jews seem to control everything? And you're like, really? Did they say that? Like yes, it really does exist. And both of these things, I think, are absolutely so.
I do too. At any type of, like, I think it's easy for people to, well, not easy, but it's for some people to box themselves into some fundamentalist mindset of whatever sort, given whatever type of area of thought you want to focus on.
Yeah.
To where, there's a weird purist aspect to it, I suppose.
I call it the binary.
Yeah.
Right. Heaven and hell. Right. And this is what my critique of religion is like. So somebody had premarital sex and somebody shot up a Waffle House. They're both going to hell. They're getting the same punishment. Right. Like, this is
or just being born into a different religion.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
Hindu.
And you but you heard of the Bible, right? Well, yeah, okay, well, too bad, man. The writing was on the wall. Like, this kind of binary is the way a child thinks. It's right or it's wrong. A 3-year-old is not going to get nuance.
Or just how incredibly complex an individual person is going to be.
Naughty or nice for Santa, right? And you're still believing in Santa. Well, wow, those are my only two choices. It's binary. And I think maybe sometimes the binary makes people safe, and I think that in religion, and maybe in some of this extreme ideology,
it would definitely. I mean, if you saw the world through that type of lens, it would make things a lot easier in the world. And maybe less scary in a way, because you would assume that you are of the saved sort, or you are on the right
woke
team,
sort,
the woke
sort,
on the right tribe.
I absolutely see that, and I think that there's a certain arrogance too. That maybe you came to atheism before you came to social justice, and like you could get this. Well, I saw through God. I can't be fooled anymore. But I think once you believe that you cannot be manipulated, you've just opened the door to being manipulated. And I
think you're right.
I think it's the same way with somebody like going over to religion. Like once you blind yourself like that, like man, you better believe that I can be manipulated. And that's your best defense.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think even like extremely. I think the way that extremely intelligent people can intelligently convince themselves of extremely stupid ideas is simply by allowing emotion to overtake the logical side of who they are. And I mean, even an example I've used in the past when I've brought this up is simply like, if you've ever had a whatever type of significant other you've had, and you get into some argument with that person, and it gets to some extent heated, and you know in that moment that the best thing you can do is walk away and come back to this. The best thing you can do is just drop it, and we'll both come back and we'll both calm down.
Yeah.
But both of you don't,
Right.
you know? Because you just got to say one more thing, and you know that this is going to be the linchpin in your argument or whatever it is you're trying to get across, and you're being more emotional than you're being logical in that moment. That's something I think everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
But so many people, you know, I think it was Michael Shermer who said something to the extent of, you know, smart people have smart reasons for believing dumb things, you know, or some variation on that. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting.
And I think that's reasonable. And I think it's also appropriate not to judge the whole character. You could be smart on everything and super dumb on something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Newton, we generally think is a smart guy, but he kept thinking that if he could figure out that,
Stone. Yeah, he was convinced
the temple, right? If we can just get the dimensions of the temple, like that you thought Principia was good,
right?
Like, come on, and you know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I mean, and your life is way too complex for any one person to have a bead on every single facet of that gigantic diamond, you know.
Okay, and I'm going to come back. Here's a question. It goes, what do you think the trend of social media exodus and the impact of social media is on mental health? That's interesting.
Ah, gosh. A lot of the people that I work with actually don't have much of a connection to it because I think they can't afford the gadgets, you know.
But it seems like everybody's got a phone these days, right? Like in the migrant crisis, everyone has got
a lot of them have
phone.
Government issue phones.
Yeah.
So they're able to call, but you couldn't pull up the internet. Or
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that sucks.
Yeah,
I mean, like I figured. With our reliance on apps and stuff like these days, then I started thinking, you know, the Obama phone. Oh, yeah, that's almost, you know, you could make an argument that you might need one.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you can't get internet, damn.
Yeah.
That's like you can't get on the Twitter.
That's pre-87, you know.
Holy shit! Like, God, what am I going to do without trolling people on Twitter? Right?
Yeah.
People, okay. Let's see. We're just gonna read some of these. Unfortunately, I need a slightly bigger iPad these days. It said, I read an article that those in poverty tend to use social media more than those in higher income brackets. I wondered if there's a correlation there. You know, as buyers, higher depression rates, lower self-esteem prevalent among heavy social media users. You know, that might a controlled study, you could probably set a controlled study up for that.
Yeah, you could. I think you could.
And I think that's going to be more like than the realms of like academia as that blends over with mental health, because it's a really good question. We have something that we don't know what to do with. And I wonder could we glean anything from radio? Like radio hits, you know, in the 20s and revolutionizes things, right? I mean, before you couldn't have this massive, now granted, that's a one-way communication, but like, were there some tumultuous things in that society that affected people? You know, how did they deal with radio?
Yeah. I mean, all the way back to, you know, actually writing things down, right? And not having an oral tradition of how you go about it. I mean, back to the printing press. You know, before that, everything had to be handwritten, and everything, a lot of what was utilized was controlled by the church, controlled by the monks who actually took the time and had the educational background to bring about a book, which would take who knows how long.
Yeah, well, you're right. I guess the printing press, that's a good example. Like they didn't know how to handle that, right? There was plenty of people burned at the stake in Britain for translating the Bible into English.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. Yeah,
and that's funny. And like St. Thomas More, the patron saint of politicians, did that. Although before then he was himself, you know, it's come around. You know, and been both. And I think More is an interesting character. In some ways, he's very good defender of liberty, and in some ways, he's a tyrant.
Yeah.
You know, and that I think that's often what you see. And like our friend Azra Nomani, who came to the last Mythcon, said she met Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. You know, and this is a woman that was like very, very good friends with Danny Pearl, who he personally executed, and she met him at Guantanamo. And that the problem with some of these people, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is also extraordinarily charismatic into being diabolical.
Right.
You know, so the good can go with the bad. And I think we've really got to get better at our character judgments and not straw manning people and say, this is troubling. I agree with you here, but I'm troubled with some of this, rather than judging that whole character.
Right.
Or
and actually interacting, not just projecting and then seeing what bounces back, to whatever it is that you are resonating with in whatever way. A lot of times a lot of this does speak to mental health in a sense. A lot of the patients that I have who have some type of, schizophrenia realm type of diagnosis have an extremely difficult time communicating. So they kind of are very isolated from the world in such a way that they do not have the ability to share their ideas and really develop ideas over time in a way that has the same type of flow of a simple conversation like what we're having now. And I see, to me, to a certain degree, a lot of what I end up seeing online is often somebody who is just typing away in some type of anger fit that doesn't even consider what it is that they're trying to get across, as much as they're concerned with what it is they're trying to type. Trying to express themselves more to themselves than actually to the person they're directing this to. I had, as an example, this was just interesting. It was during Hillary's speech when she accepted the nomination, and I just put up an observation
for the DNC, right?
Yeah. Just put up this observation I had that I just found disturbing, and I still find disturbing. It isn't something that I had heard much of, and still really haven't. But if she would have gotten elected and had 2 terms, then I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm just saying, okay, if this would have happened, you would have had 2 families that split up the White House for 36 or 44 years, with Papa Bush being vice president under Reagan.
That's true.
For 2 terms, and then being president himself for 1 term, and then Clinton coming after for 2 terms, and then what I've always thought of him as Little Bush, the shrub, coming in afterwards, and then you have Obama's terms, and then another Clinton. That would have been that. I mean, that something like that's never happened in American politics. I just find that really odd. I mean, the Roosevelts were 5th cousins and 24 years apart in terms of, and I'm pretty sure they were different parties. And then, I mean, the other thing I think of is John Adams and his son, who I think we're also 24 years apart. But that just kind of reeks of oligarchy.
Here's a fun fact too. Like, Barbara Bush's maiden name was Pierce, and is a descendant of the line of Franklin Pierce.
Oh. Wow.
So fun fact. I'm not sure exactly, how many removed there are, but I do know that she is related to Franklin Pierce in some way. So yeah, fun fact. I don't think it's necessarily relevant. I'm just trying to show off my nerddom here.
Nice.
But I think the other, I'll put a bow on it. I think the other thing we have to deal with are those that are socially awkward, right? And I think in person, it's a lot easier to see this. Generally, like, I think most people are nice. There's always assholes that makes fun of people like that, but I think the best recipe for that, like, I think Christina Hoff-Sommers said that the best enemy against bigotry is friendship.
Yeah.
And I do believe that. And I think on social media, it's so hard because you can be alone. You don't get that same friendship. And then you just don't know where people are coming from. What if somebody's just being awkward and they said something dumb, or try not to dogpile too much.
With my little,
lest you get dogpiled yourself.
With my observation of the 2 families thing in the White House, my reason for bringing it up was simply that, like, once I put that up, and like I just got piled on by people who were really angry at me for like saying something that they thought was anti-Hillary, and I just got all this like hate. Yeah. And I was kind of mystified, like, what are you doing? It's an observation that's based on like numbers. It would be so many years. That's it. That's all I'm, it wasn't even an opinion. So, but I felt like in that situation, all of these people were emotionally reacting to something that they were hearing in what I had said that wasn't even what I had said.
Yeah.
I
almost think it's like, oh my God, not you.
Right.
Like, how did you begin? How are you a Trumpkin or whatever they're going to call you?
Trumpkin.
And it puts down, I think, I don't remember like knowing my friends' political affiliations. Even like your best friends, you generally know, but even then it's probably less nuanced than you think, unless you talk to them all the time. You know a little bit, but for the most part you don't. And I think now with social media, and especially with our polarized culture, it's like it's harder to be friendly. Now it's a character judgment. Wow, did I Did I really not know them? No, I actually, you did. Nothing's changed. It's just, guess what? You don't know about everything. And maybe like, this is the problem. Like social media brings us too close in a way.
Yeah, maybe. Or just, yeah, I don't know.
You know, and I think that's what we have to learn. We have to get better at dealing with. I don't know the solution. You know, there's people a lot smarter than me.
I think we have to get better at sharing information in a way that doesn't lead to a kind of blockage coming about by somebody claiming offense.
Yeah.
Well, and just exchange of information, free flow of it, you know,
right.
It doesn't have to be.
And try not to troll, right? Like that's that generally, I think that with our mission, it would not be a good idea for the MM to do that. And so that's what we're trying to do. I'm not telling people what to do, right? It's just, I think leading by example is the best thing you can do.
I think so too. Yeah. Absolutely think so.
But I think there's also room for all kinds. I believe that there's room for the religious and the atheist to live in a pluralistic way. There's room for the right and left to do it. There's room for social justice and those that are critical of social justice to coexist in a more peaceful. I don't know, in a way that's not a turbulent airplane with the you know, the things coming down.
Right.
But yeah, with a depressurized plane, because that's what I feel like we're on. So excellent comments. Thank you so much for the chat. There was some really good stuff in here. And thank you so much, Jason. We're really to pick your brain on music as well as all this other stuff, and looking forward to having Mythcon both to hear your music and your views. All right. Thanks, everyone.